The note sat there, mocking me with its brevity and finality. Joey, I'm stepping away for a while. Not sure how long. It's not about you, just a new someone. Please don't try to track me down or reach out. This is something I have to do. Love, Shelley? Boom. Just like that, my world turned upside down. 21 years together and she's gone in the blink of an eye, vanished into thin air. I'm Joe Mason, and my wife goes by Michelle, but everyone calls her Shelley. We've been intertwined since the days of grade school, our parents sharing professional spaces. It wasn't until our junior year of college that sparks flew between us. Different paths in our early years, me bouncing around various public schools while she did her thing elsewhere. But college changed everything. Senior year, we took the plunge and moved in together. Post-graduation, a summertime wedding sealed the deal. Shelley, with her perky demeanor, blonde locks, and that twinkle in her blue eyes, stands in stark contrast to my more grounded, brown-haired, brown-eyed self. Professionally, I run my own legal show, dabbling in a bit of everything. Shelley, on the other hand, commands a team as a nurse supervisor at the local hospital. We're both 42, both dedicated to staying in shape through gym sessions, hikes, and a bit of volleyball for good measure. Shelley's all about the aerobic dance routines at the gym, while I prefer the raw power of pounding a heavy bag, doubling as both a stress reliever and a strength builder. We have two kids going off to college, James, who is 19, and Susan, who just turned 18. On a sunny day in April, a note came into my life, and I wasted no time in calling the kids. James was the first to pick up the phone. I told him about the letter, and his reaction? He was just as shocked as I was. I promised to keep him informed, and I did. Next was Susan. She took it calmly, not as surprised, but still hurt. It turns out she had a feeling something was up when she saw Mom chatting with a guy from work during lunch. His name's William Connor, she said. But did she suspect something? Not exactly. Just felt a bit uneasy. She had her doubts, but didn't say anything, now blaming herself for not speaking up earlier. Don't worry about it, Susan, I told her, accepting the harsh reality. I'll take care of it. You just relax. With the family sorted, I delved into the online world, searching for any information about this Connor guy. He's a doctor who used to work at Shelley's hospital until recently. He's 40, divorced, and went from being a cardiologist to an administrator. But here's the twist. He messed up an operation 3 years ago, causing someone to die. He looks tall, blonde, and strong in his photo. But when I tried to find recent information on him, I hit a dead end. Nothing. So I called in some help, asking my friend Bill James, who's good at finding things online, to assist me. He promised to let me know if he found anything worth pursuing. I checked our bank accounts. Shelley hadn't used the checking account, but her regular deposit didn't come in this month. She had taken almost all our savings, over $200,000, from a Vanguard account. I called Bill again and asked him to track it, giving him the account details. Then I contacted Vanguard about the withdrawal, which they said was in process. The representative said he'd get back to me. Our house was owned jointly and valued around $800,000. Maybe Shelley had some plan in mind. Or maybe she was not only cheating, but stealing too. I drove to her parents' house about 30 miles away on a Wednesday. Both cars were parked out front. Mark and Sally Benton had worked with my parents at GMG Enterprises for years. They used to socialize more when I was younger. I never had any issues with them and thought they raised their daughter well, until today. I knew Shelley was close to her mom. I walked up to the front door and knocked. Mark greeted me and wasn't surprised to see me. He stepped aside and led me to the kitchen in the back where Sally sat at the table with a glass of water. Hey, Sally, what's going on that I don't know about? Mark explained. Well, Sally mostly knew that Shelley was heading down a dangerous path. We saw it that way. She talked to her mom about it, and we agreed not to tell you until she had a chance to talk to you herself. Sally, she didn't give me any chance at all. And she emptied out our savings. I might have to consider getting her arrested for that, unless she sends half of it back soon. Needless to say, I'm really upset with her and her partner. Joe, there's no need for that kind of language, Sally interjected, not really angry. She thinks he's her soulmate. And what about you? Because I think he's a thief, at least of money. I met him once. She brought him here about a month ago. She didn't say why he was with her then, just introduced him as a co-worker. We had a conversation. At the end, I thought she was introducing him to her parents. Later, I warned her, but obviously she didn't listen. I assume you know where she went. Where? We're not supposed to tell you, Joe. She's worried about how you'll react. Sally Mark, I'll find her in a couple of days anyway, and she's absolutely right that I'm reacting badly. Just as I was there, my phone rang. It was Bill. He told me that Shelley and Connor got jobs at a hospital in Pittsburgh and rented an apartment nearby. They shared a bank account, but the 200 grand hadn't shown up yet. Bill thought it might be offshore. If so, he could still track it, but it would cost. He promised to update me. Mark and Sally watched me during the call. They saw me jot down the hospital, bank, and apartment addresses in a notebook. Bill also gave me their cell phone numbers, but I didn't write them down. I remembered instead. I didn't want them to know I had that info. Sally asked, "If she comes back and wants you back, will you take her?" "Why would she do that? She seems to want a total break, no contact. It doesn't sound like she'll come back, except maybe for money." "I think she'll want to come back, Joey, but how long? I'm not sure." "If she apologizes right now, maybe we can go to counseling. But the longer she's away, with another man, living as husband and wife with him, well, you know, I don't want you two to split up," Sally said, tearing up. Mark comforted her with a pat on the shoulder. I said my goodbyes to them. As I got back to my office, Bill rang again. He mentioned that Vanguard had paused the transfer of the $200K due to potential fraud concerns. Even though it was a joint account, they weren't releasing the funds yet. There seemed to be some irregularities in the transaction. I shared what they told me when I called them. Upon calling back, I stressed that the withdrawal wasn't right. They explained they halted it due to several anomalies in the process. I had a colleague in my office draft an emergency TRO aimed at Vanguard, Connor, and Shelley. It took about an hour. Then I had it electronically filed. That should delay the theft for a bit. A TRO is a temporary restraining order, often with an application for a permanent one attached. I phoned my folks in Oregon, where they were retired, and informed them of the situation. They were surprised and sympathetic. Afterward, I pondered what more I could do, and more importantly, what I wanted to do. I did a quick search and found that adultery wasn't a crime in Pennsylvania, but it was a misdemeanor in Virginia. I let that sink in. Deciding to seek advice, like I often do with tough problems, I called my mentor, Uncle Jed. He was my mother's older brother living near us in D.C. He used to be a lawyer but retired a few years ago. However, to me, he was more of a source of wisdom, not just in law, but in life itself. I inquired about visiting him, and we set up dinner plans. I decided to grab a fancy pizza and beer to bring to his place. While waiting, I called a private investigator I knew. I asked him to find out how long Shelley and Connor had been involved intimately. Maybe it had been happening for a while. Who could tell? I tried to recall if I noticed any signs from Shelley lately that should have alerted me. I had just finished a lengthy trial that lasted 4 months. We got a favorable verdict and were negotiating the final details. Perhaps during that case, which took about 6 months including preparation, I hadn't paid much attention to Shelley. We still had Zex. Well, we did until about a month ago. Then nothing. I should have noticed that. Before the break, her responses hadn't changed, and neither had the frequency. Whether busy or not, I enjoyed being intimate with Shelley. It wasn't my first lengthy trial. After a few weeks, things usually settled into a routine, and I wasn't as preoccupied at home. On the way to Jed's house, I stopped by a clinic to get tested for STDs. Then I picked up the pizza and beer. Jed welcomed me at his door, the same one I remembered from my childhood. It was the same house. His last partner had left about a year ago. He had been married for 40 years to a wonderful woman named Ellen, who passed away from pneumonia 5 years earlier. Since then, he had been with a few women, but none for too long. There was nobody there except him today. "Well, what brings a busy lawyer like you to a place like this?" he asked. I explained, showed him the note, and told him what actions I had taken. "I see. That's unlike her. I want you to sit here for a while. Think about your life with her and what it has meant to you. I'll get something to drink. I'll be back shortly." I did as he asked. I reminisced about all the good times we shared. We laughed, raised our kids, spent time together, and were intimate. All as a couple. I found myself silently crying as I delved into these memories. She was the person in my life for over 20 years. Yes, we had children, but she was the one I loved and trusted the most. Tears streamed down my face as I reflected on our life together, now vanished. How could she have done this to me? I ended up sobbing into my sleeve. Jed returned with 2 shot glasses and some whiskey. He simply let me cry. He poured the drinks. When he downed his shot, I did the same. It was good stuff. It helped take my mind off things. Looking at him, I said, "You're really smart. Thanks." Do you want her back? He asked. I want my old life back, but that doesn't seem possible. I'm not sure if I want her back. She might hurt me again, if I even survive this time. What I think is, you need time to process. Maybe you need help with that. I did a simple thing, just letting you release some of the pain, but you might need more assistance than I can offer. Besides, I haven't had much luck since Ellen. Well, at least you get some action. Yeah, but it's not enough when you've had the whole package. Then we spent 2 hours reminiscing about our marriages, going back and forth. He shed tears too, but Ellen was gone forever. As for Shelley, it was hard to say. I was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, I couldn't bear to be with her again. As our long conversation came to an end, I was overcome with a fierce anger so strong that I thought I might collapse. I rose and stumbled outside. I began hitting and kicking an old heavy bag hanging from a tree in the backyard. I was consumed by a rage fiercer than any I had felt before, all aimed at Shelley. I punched her face, kicked her body. The awful, heartless, wicked woman, Jed observed from the porch. He later mentioned he almost called 911. Just before he was about to dial, the bag fell off the tree, propelled by one of my kicks, and flew over the neighbor's fence. I collapsed to the ground, crying. Jed helped me inside, trying to calm me down as much as possible. I was utterly drained, like a limp noodle. Despite being physically fit, I had exceeded my limits by far. After a while, I don't know how long, he settled me on the couch and covered me with a blanket. I slept through the night. In the morning, I woke up to the smell of bacon and coffee. I rolled off the couch, stood up unsteadily, but managed to get my bearings. I was famished. We ate bacon, eggs, and toast together. Then, I headed to the shower. I discarded my clothes and borrowed a sweatsuit from Jed. I shaved, shampooed, and tried to refresh myself. My hands were sore and raw. I applied antiseptic and bandaged them. Shelley had been a nurse and taught me what to do. My body ached all over, and I had a cut above my right eye. I used a butterfly Band-Aid. I looked like I had been in a brutal fight, and lost. It had been about 24 hours since I read the note. Jed gave me the name of a marriage counselor he had used before, Mary Stevens. He believed she could help me sort things out. He mentioned that marriage counseling didn't necessarily require both parties. I accepted the card. I drove home, changed into work attire, and headed to the office. My appearance didn't go unnoticed by the staff, who looked at me curiously. I called for a team meeting. We had 12 employees, including 4 other lawyers. I explained what had happened and informed them that I might not be as available until I resolved the matter. We arranged for substitute counsel for some of my responsibilities. In my office, I surprisingly managed to get some work done. I had lunch at my desk and worked diligently throughout the afternoon. At 5:30 p.m., I left for home. Shelley had taken some clothes and personal items, but most of her belongings were still there. I went to Lowe's and bought boxes and tape. I systematically packed her things, clothes, books, photo albums, shoes, into the boxes and stored them in the garage. Since Shelley's car wasn't there, there was space available. I informed Bill that Shelley had her car. Next, I went through the house and removed all photos of Shelley, tossing them into a trash bag along with their frames. I pondered the situation and prepared a microwave meal before heading to bed. However, just as I was about to sleep, I decided to check our home computer and her cell phone, which was charging. The computer contained her emails, but they didn't provide any useful information. Her phone showed calls to a 540 area code starting about 6 weeks prior. There were also texts, both to and from Connor, also known as Bill or Billy. The texts arranged lunch dates and meetings before work, but nothing overtly incriminating. I went to sleep. On Friday, I went back to work. It had helped me cope the day before, and it did so again. After lunch, the private investigator called. He had positioned himself at a lunch spot frequented by women from Shelley's department and simply listened in. Unsurprisingly, the disappearance of the boss and the attractive doctor was a hot topic of discussion. There had been intense speculation about the two before they vanished. One woman claimed to have seen them leaving a motel one afternoon, while another witnessed them kissing outside a nearby restaurant. Overall, the staff was convinced they were involved romantically. The private investigator obtained paperwork from the motel showing 3 afternoon room rentals in the weeks before Shelley left. She paid for them in cash, with copies of receipts and license plate numbers, including 2 of hers and 1 not hers. This led me to scrutinize Connor's finances. Why hadn't he contributed? So I called Bill again. It took him about 2 hours to find out that Connor had faced severe financial problems about 10 months before their move. He was behind on his mortgage, car payments, and credit cards. His hospital salary was being garnished due to divorce and overdue child support. I realized that the whole situation might have been about money on his part, specifically the $200,000. Initially, I felt sorry for Shelley, but then frustration overwhelmed me. I punched a nearby office chair, causing a commotion. My assistant peeked in to check, and I apologized. Next, I scheduled an appointment with the marriage counselor. Then I visited the office of a family law firm and asked to see Mildred Hoover, the best divorce lawyer in the area. She was available and listened as I explained everything. I learned that the temporary restraining order, TRO, was set for the following Monday, and Shelley had already been served at work in Pittsburgh. I didn't need Mildred for that. My firm could handle it. I sought her advice on what to expect in a divorce. She reviewed some financial data and spent time on her computer. It seems she might not come out of this too bad. Your law practice is protected due to the prenuptial agreement. She would receive half the value of the house and half of the assets acquired during the marriage, which is likely most of the assets. However, she'll still have enough to live comfortably. Let me mull this over. We'll wait to see what happens at the TRO hearing. But go ahead and prepare the documents. Include adultery and any other relevant issues. That evening, I had a microwave pizza and went for a long run. Around 9:30, I called Susan. She answered just before it went to voicemail. "Hey, Dad, how are you?" "Okay, just wanted to know if you heard from your mom." "Well, I did, but I promised." "Shoot. She said you were trying to get her and Connor in trouble. She said she has to be in court or have a lawyer there with her on Monday. She was upset." "What's going on, Dad?" "It's about a lot of money. Someone tried to take it from our joint investment account. I filed to stop that so we could sort it out. I'm not sure if your mom was aware of it, though." "Okay. Is she safe with that guy?" She seemed worried. "I don't know if she's safe. It's up to her, really. She can leave if she feels threatened." "Why do you ask?" "There was some shouting in the background. A man. I couldn't hear what he said, but it sounded angry. Mom said it was nothing." "I hope so. There's not much we can do from here." We discussed her school and a new friend she made, then hung up. I had a restless weekend. Monday was significant with the TRO in the morning and a counseling session in the afternoon. I spoke with James, who hadn't heard from his mother. Later, I went to the gym where I encountered Shelley's friend, Clara Barton, a nurse. Clara attempted to avoid me, but I intercepted her. "I don't want to talk, Joe. It wouldn't help anyway." "You knew she was messing up, Clara. Why didn't you inform me?" "She said you wouldn't react well. Might get violent." "I'm more her friend. I didn't know you well enough to determine if she was lying." "Well, what about this guy? Connor? Is he trouble? Because that's the vibe I'm getting." "Yes, he's trouble. I warned her, but I'm sorry, she was getting the intimacy she wanted. She believed she was in love, and he was her soulmate." "Yeah, I heard that from her mom. I wish she had just talked to me about it instead of sneaking off like she did." "I think she'll return soon. He's not her soulmate. This might blow over if you're patient." "Nope, it won't blow over. She made her choice. She can't come back to me." Clara shrugged and returned to the treadmill. She looked attractive in her workout attire. I let her catch me looking when she resumed exercising. We exchanged smiles, and I admired her from behind as she exercised. She noticed me watching her in the mirror and smiled back. As she increased the treadmill's speed, it emphasized her figure. I blew her a kiss and walked away, but I stored the encounter in my mind. Perhaps I'd be single again soon. No harm in preparing for that possibility. The pleasant interaction with Clara lifted my spirits. I became aroused thinking about her. It had been a while since I had sex due to the dry spell with Shelley. I wore loose gym shorts and took a spot on a leg push machine across the room. I set the weight high and did 3 sets of 12 reps. Then I increased the weight. Clara got off the treadmill and approached me. We locked eyes as I lifted a heavy stack of weight 3 times. No easy task. After the last set, I lay there breathing heavily, observing her. "I suppose I've stirred something up," she said, eyeing my crotch. I didn't try to hide it. "I feel guilty, but I'm willing to overlook that if you'd like to shower at my place across the street," she offered. "Deal. I'll grab my stuff and meet you out front." "No need to get your stuff. You can come back after," she said with a smile, licking her lips. "I hope you're not too worn out." Clara, in her late 30s, was of medium height with a tight, curvy body, brown hair, and hazel eyes. She was conventionally pretty and had been divorced for some time. Clearly, she was prime rebound material for me. I immediately stood up from the bench and followed her out of the door. There were only two other people, a man and a woman, who looked at us as we left, all of us smiling. Clara guided me across the street to an apartment building, up to the second floor. The view on our way up was stunning. She was giggling and swaying seductively. Opening the door, she gestured for me to enter. While I glanced around briefly, she approached from behind, turned me around, and pulled me close. Tipping her head up, we kissed passionately. She pressed against me, her tongue exploring my mouth. Breaking the kiss, she gasped, "I always wanted you, but you were the boss's husband. Now I'm going to have you." "I'm all yours," I chuckled, undressing eagerly as she revealed her toned body. With passion in our eyes, we explored each other on her bed, reaching intense climaxes together before collapsing in exhaustion. After a short while, she exclaimed, "Wow, oh Joe, how quickly can you get ready again?" "I'm not sure. That was incredible. You're so tight and strong," I replied. The answer to her question came about 60 seconds later. When I became aroused again, she climbed on top of me and rode me. She kissed me deeply, tasting herself on my cheeks. After some gentle lovemaking, she intensified her movements, and I matched her vigor. We were back to passionate closeness, only this time she took the lead. I didn't mind at all. Once again, we reached climax almost simultaneously, and she collapsed onto me. I drifted off to sleep for a while until she woke me up. "You need to go get your things. Bring them here. You can shower here," she said. It was dark outside. I got dressed and quickly jogged over to retrieve my clothes. After stuffing them into my bag, I returned. The woman from earlier smiled as I left. "Did you have a good time?" she asked. "Yes, thanks for asking," I replied. Back at Clara's place, she had already showered. I followed suit and put on a fresh pair of gym shorts from my bag. That was all. Clara wore a terry robe, and I knew I'd be taking it off her later. "We need some food and beer," she said, opening the fridge to grab 2 bottles of pale ale. From the freezer, she retrieved a pizza and popped it into the oven, setting the timer. We cracked open the beers and started sipping. "So, do you really mean it that you won't take her back?" At that moment, I did. Maybe it was too soon. But today, being with you might have changed my perspective. "So you're saying if she did it, you could too?" "I'm saying being intimate with you might convince me it's time to move on. And why does everyone assume she'll want to return? She must have considered leaving deeply." "She might realize soon that she's made a mistake. Then perhaps she'll gather the courage to ask for another chance. But maybe not. She might feel too ashamed. I'll say this much. She's been having sex with this guy for a while. I don't know if I can forgive that. We're probably done. I can't imagine anything she could say to change my mind." "Well, big guy, no matter what happens, you can always come here, and I'll give you a good time. That's a promise." By the time I finished my beer, the pizza arrived. We devoured it in 15 minutes. Continuing our evening with a drink, she relaxed in the armchair while I passionately brought her to climax multiple times. Transitioning to the floor, she skillfully returned the favor, leading to a moment of profound intimacy as she savored every moment. We spent the night wrapped up in each other, caught in a whirlwind of desire. Exhausted yet rejuvenated, we woke to the morning light, intertwined and bare. We headed to the bathroom for a quick tooth scrub, sharing a spare brush like old buddies. Then we indulged in a steamy shower together, the hot water igniting our passion against the cool tiles. It was intense, a wild surge of primal urges unlike anything I'd felt before. Afterward, we whipped up a hearty breakfast, still in the nude. Why bother with clothes when the air felt so liberating? Lounging on her couch, fulfilled yet eager, we cautiously reached out to each other, testing the reality of our bond. It was tangible, undeniable. Before long, we found ourselves intertwined once again, this time draped over the back of the couch, our bodies moving in sync with a primal longing. "I'm not sure what to think of all this," she admitted, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "I've always been drawn to you, but it's more than I ever imagined." "Like a tiger seizing its prey," I chuckled, though her words weighed heavily on me. "I never anticipated this," she confessed, her eyes shimmering with a blend of wonder and longing. "But I want you again. Right now." "Maybe," I murmured, unsure of what lay ahead. It felt like an experiment, a journey into unknown territory. How long could this frenzy last? And could we withstand its intensity? We might just be the most sexually compatible duo on the planet, I reflected, contemplating our whirlwind encounter. But how sustainable is it? She wondered, a touch of concern in her voice. And can we handle it if it is? We'll only find out by living it, I responded, my gaze lingering on her, desire simmering beneath the surface. And with that, we fell back into each other's embrace, the couch barely containing our passion. In that moment, thoughts of the future faded away, replaced by the raw, unfiltered passion of the present. I think it's time we freshen up and head over to my place, I suggested, breaking the silence after our laughter. I need to change and catch up on some emails. If you sit on the other side of the car, we might just make it there. It's not too far away. Her laughter was contagious, and I couldn't help but join in. Moments later, we were both doubled over, rolling on the floor with laughter. When the laughter finally subsided, we decided to give my plan a try. Pun intended. Our excitement had calmed down, albeit slightly, as we showered without any further antics. Dressed and composed, we made our way to my modest home. It was her first time stepping inside, as far as I knew, and she explored every corner with eager curiosity. While she checked things out, I attended to some urgent tasks, sneaking in a change of clothes upstairs. Since it was Sunday, we turned on the baseball game as we settled in. It turned out she was a big fan, much like me. We watched closely for nearly an hour, the tension of the game mixed with stolen glances and playful touches. Eventually, our desires led us upstairs to the comfort of the main bedroom, where we shared a more tender, intimate connection. It was a rare moment, a mutual climax that left us both breathless. As we lay there basking in the afterglow, Clara's expression changed, tears welling in her eyes. "Joey, I think I'm falling for you," she confessed, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you for this." Her tears brought tears to my eyes too, and for a moment we shared a vulnerable moment. Eventually, we wiped away our tears, finding solace in the distraction of the baseball game still playing downstairs. "I wonder how the game's going," I said, eager to shift our focus. And with that, we returned to the living room, losing ourselves once more in the game, together until the end. I prepared dinner for us, making chicken stir-fry. We enjoyed our meal with some wine, exchanging many tender caresses. When we looked into each other's eyes, I realized I always wanted her by my side. "I'm in love with you." "I'll fight to keep you, Joe," she confessed. "You don't have to fight, I'm all yours," I assured her. Later, we returned upstairs and began with gentle lovemaking. But it quickly turned into passionate, primal sex, repeated several times, even in the morning. Over breakfast, I mentioned my upcoming court appearance and therapy session. "Maybe I won't need as much therapy now, but I'll still go. If you're still here when I return, I'll cook again." "I'll be here. Well, probably unclothed," she joked, and after a laugh, I kissed her and drove her home. In court, alongside a lawyer from my firm, Connor and Shelley arrived with their attorney. The Vanguard lawyer also attended. Judge Colson presided. Shelley avoided looking at me while Connor briefly glared before turning away. The Vanguard lawyer outlined their concerns regarding a transfer held up due to suspicious computer activity. An unrecognized computer initiated the transfer at 3 a.m., with the receiving account not belonging to either of us. The firm stopped the transfer to avoid liability, hence they were relieved to have obtained the TRO. My attorney stated that the money was jointly owned and taken without my knowledge or consent, despite my objections. He clarified that Shelley had abruptly left me, quit her job, relocated to Pittsburgh, and moved in with William Connor. Their attorney argued that Shelley had the same right to withdraw from the account as I did, insisting the money should go to where she intended to transfer it. The judge questioned the Vanguard representative. Where was the money supposed to be sent? "To an account in a local bank owned by William Connor," came the response. "Have you determined whose computer was used for the transfer attempt?" the judge inquired. "No, that's currently beyond our capability," the Vanguard representative replied. The judge then requested Shelley to be sworn in. Shelley appeared distressed, with Connor grasping her arm as the clerk administered the oath. She struggled to raise her hand, but eventually managed to do so, affirming to tell the truth. "Mrs. Mason, are you married to Joseph Mason?" the judge queried. "Yes," she responded. "Were you a joint owner of a Vanguard account with him?" "Yes." "Did you attempt to withdraw $200,000 from that account last week?" "No," she hesitated, glancing around anxiously. "Did you give someone permission for such a withdrawal?" "Not for that amount," she explained. "Mr. Connor asked to borrow $20,000 to settle debts. I reluctantly agreed and provided my password since my computer was out of order. I wasn't aware of the $200,000 transaction." When did you become aware of the amount? The judge pressed. When I was served, she admitted. The judge then turned to Connor, who reluctantly provided his name and address upon the judge's insistence. The judge inquired about my intentions regarding divorce, to which my lawyer confirmed that the complaint was prepared and would be filed soon. The judge ordered Vanguard to freeze the account until the family court could assess the assets. He instructed my lawyer to file by the next business day, warning of reconsideration if not done promptly. I saw Shelley slump into a chair, while Connor stormed out. She sat there, burying her head in her hands. Once the courtroom cleared out, only Shelley and I remained. The bailiff wanted us to leave so he could lock up. I guided her into the hallway, but Connor was nowhere to be found, and only a few people passed by. I glanced at Shelley. Did you come here with that jerk? She looked at me, nodding. Yes. Well, looks like you might need to catch a bus back to your new life. Joey, I'm sorry about this. I thought he was my soulmate. That's what you told your folks. It seems I was mistaken, such a fool. I can't express how deeply hurt and upset your abrupt note made me, ending our long marriage. Joey, our marriage isn't over. I realize now that I was foolish. I want to come back, be your wife. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Sorry, Shelley. Not happening. You cheated on me for months behind my back, sneaking off without even talking to me. You played house with him. Well, you have to take the bad with the good. Can we talk somewhere more private? What about the kids? They're not happy with you. Do you have any real explanation for why you tossed me aside like a used tissue? No. I thought he was my soulmate. I said that. I thought it would be easier for you if it was a clean break. But right now, I can't explain why I was so dumb. She broke into tears. It pained me to see her like that, but I kept my distance. I was done with her, at least as a wife. There are only so many heavy bags in the world. Plus, there was Clara. She might be my soulmate. Well, at least she was the best sex partner I ever had. And I liked her even beyond that, I think. I inquired about Shelley's plans. I've got a job in Pittsburgh. I start my shift tomorrow and have rent to cover. I've signed a year lease. I'll boot Bill out and see how things play out. Maybe you'll miss me after a while. Then you can let me know, okay? Sure. I might miss you, I suppose. But I'd like to understand what went wrong. I'm still shocked and confused. I thought everything was going fine. How wrong I was. I'll reach out once I come to terms with everything. She gave me a brief hug and walked away. I felt a mix of deep sadness, openly crying as she left, and a knot of anger twisting in my gut. Deciding that therapy was necessary, I attended an afternoon appointment after grabbing lunch at Subway. Tuna melt, my usual. Mary Stevens, the marriage counselor, clarified that she wasn't a psychotherapist, mainly dealing with troubled marriages and their aftermath if needed. Initially appearing like a gray-haired grandma, she moved gracefully and greeted me with a sunny, genuine smile, instantly winning me over. What brings you in, Mr. Mason? Please, call me Joe. My wife left me suddenly. She left a short note and moved to Pittsburgh with her new partner. They'd been involved for about a month. I understand. And how have you been coping? I detailed my initial business-like reaction, followed by sessions with Jed and heavy bag workouts. I admitted to feeling heartbroken and angry, sometimes simultaneously. You seem to have navigated through common stages of grief swiftly. Depression, sadness, anger. These feelings typically alternate for a while. How are you feeling now? Well, embarrassed for starters. I was at the gym venting my anger through heavy lifting. There was this cute nurse, Clara Barton, an acquaintance through Shelley. I cornered her and got her to spill about Shelley's actions with the doctor at work. Then, I noticed her in her spandex, and things escalated quickly. We ended up at her apartment across the street, engaging in a frenzy of passion. It's been ongoing for days now, consuming my thoughts even during today's court hearing. Mary Stevens initially appeared shocked, but then she began to smile, a smile I had previously mentioned liking. So, you've developed, at the very least, a sexual attraction to Clara Barton, the nurse, she said with a hint of laughter and a twinkle in her eye. Curious, she asked, do you know the story behind her name and career as a nurse? Embarrassed, I admitted. I haven't asked her yet. We haven't had much opportunity to talk. I'm tempted to inquire further, but that wouldn't be appropriate, she remarked, tilting her head slightly as we sat across from each other. She crossed her legs and smiled, and I sensed her flirtatiousness, quite different from the grandmotherly image I had initially perceived. I suspected something was amiss. I believe you're demonstrating something for me, illustrating what I've experienced, I observed. Well? Her expression shifted, appearing surprised and, dare I say, impressed. That's an astute observation, especially coming from a man. You caught on quickly. Perhaps I'm losing my touch. You definitely made an impact, I responded, crossing my legs and turning away from her. The point I was trying to make, and I think I succeeded, is that you might be particularly vulnerable to advances from women at this time, she explained. I'm not saying Clara's feelings aren't genuine, or that your response isn't sincere, albeit somewhat one-sided. But I suggest you get to know her better when you can find the time to talk. I'm sure we will, Mary, I assured her. She chuckled. You're quite witty, Joe. I understand your point. Clara did mention finding me attractive, but forbidden, I recalled. However, Joe, I don't want to dampen this relationship, though I doubt I could. But I do want to emphasize that what you're experiencing may go beyond typical rebound sex. It could be genuine and lasting. There have been instances of exceptional sexual compatibility, albeit rare. I brought this up to separate, for now, your new relationship with Clara from your marriage. Why? Isn't my new relationship my choice? I questioned. Yes, it is. But I'd like to explore your previous marriage and how it might influence your future behavior, she clarified. Okay, I understand. Our marriage seemed solid. I loved her, thought she loved me. We raised our kids, didn't argue much. I made time for our relationship, especially Zex. And before she left, after a long trial, we went about a month without Zex, both of us. She found it elsewhere, and I didn't notice. My fault. Shelley's youngest daughter left for college, and you were busy. Maybe she felt old and lost, Mary suggested. Perhaps, but she should have talked to me about it instead of marrying someone else. A total jerk, a thief, an asshole, I retorted. What would you have done if she confided in you about feeling lost or tempted? She inquired. I would have tried to help, maybe sought counseling. If she had already cheated. Too late, I think, I admitted. So if you stray, you can't stay, Mary summarized. Mostly, it's crucial to me. I kept my promise until she left me, I said firmly. It's a clear boundary then. But what if it was a one-time drunken mistake? She probed. The same, maybe different. Why all the hypotheticals? In reality, she did what she did, and it was unacceptable, I stated. All right, shall we continue this discussion next week? Mary proposed. Absolutely. You're quite an intriguing woman. Completely unexpected. I'd be glad to see you again, I agreed. Assuming you're not too worn out, she teased, smiling. We set a time to meet again. Since it was 4, I decided to go home. When I arrived, Clara was sitting on the porch reading. We exchanged brief greetings and then went upstairs to bed for 90 minutes. Later, we prepared a meal of roasted potatoes, spring onion, and ground lamb with various spices. It tasted delicious. I filled Clara in on the hearing. Though we were almost completely unclothed as we cooked and ate, I noticed Clara's unclothed body and asked if we could have a serious talk. She quickly put on a t-shirt. Sure, let's talk, she responded. What's on your mind? I saw a therapist today after the hearing, I began. I told her about us and how intense things have become. She called it sexual hypercompatibility, suggesting we're sexually obsessed with each other. She didn't think it was just a rebound thing for me, despite my recent divorce. I've been curious about that too, Clara admitted. It's strange how we can't seem to get enough of each other. If you dropped your shorts right now, I'd be on my knees in a flash. It's like nothing I've experienced before. I have decisions to make about Shelley, divorce, and all that, I continued. She went back to Pittsburgh, but not to her new partner. She mentioned having a lease and a job after I told her we were finished. It seems like she might be searching for something in Pittsburgh, Clara speculated. I can't say for sure, I replied, but if what we have here is real, I won't give it up. However, it hasn't been long since I was supposedly happily married. I'm feeling disoriented. Before making any permanent decisions, I want to get to know you on a deeper level. That sounds like a plan. What would you like to know? Clara asked. Everything, I answered. Clara shared her background growing up in the suburbs, attending college, and living with a partner there. Their relationship ended after graduation. She obtained her nursing degree and found a job here, where she met and married a gynecologist. He was skilled at pleasuring digitally and physically, she said. It was his main talent. Although I was content with our life, He cheated on me with a woman from our neighborhood. He wasn't discreet about it. When I found out, I confronted him. He apologized and asked for forgiveness. I decided to stay in the marriage, but it was a mistake. About a year later, he cheated again. I received a significant settlement in the divorce. He relocated his practice to New York, and I haven't seen him since. It's been 5 years. I've had some brief flings and had a friend with benefits last year until he moved to Thailand. You're not planning to go abroad, are you? No, I'm not, I assured her. So when we met at the gym, how long had it been since your last relationship? It had been almost a month, and it wasn't satisfying. Luckily, I have a vibrator, she replied. Well, now you have me, I said, leaning over to give her a small kiss, unintentionally interrupting our conversation. Later, as we lay in bed, we continued our conversation. She asked about my life, and I gave her a detailed account, focusing more on my early years since she was already familiar with recent events. Eventually, we fell asleep. I guess our bodies had reached their limit. Over the next few days, our intimate activities resumed, but at a somewhat reduced intensity. I returned to see Mary Stevens. She inquired about the new relationship. I mentioned that the intimacy was enjoyable but not as frequent. Additionally, Clara had a keen interest in baseball and was knowledgeable about it. I recounted our conversations about our past lives, expressing that it would take a considerable amount of time to truly understand Clara, but I was eager to pursue that. We delved further into my marriage. Mary emphasized the need for me to process my emotional response over time. Then she prompted me about my feelings toward Dr. Connor. I realized I hadn't given much thought to him, but when I did, I felt enraged. My sentiments can be condensed into 3 words: drawn and quartered, I confessed. Mary chuckled. I always found that phrase intriguing, though quite gruesome. But considering my current state, the concept of drawing and quartering seems oddly satisfying. I assume they performed it on a live person initially. Yes, indeed. I'm curious how you're so knowledgeable about it. Let's not delve into that. I'm just a regular person with feelings which aren't pertinent here, she replied, still smiling. You know, if it weren't for Clara, I might have asked you out. I suspect you orchestrated that demonstration deliberately, and it was incredibly effective. Just so you're aware. Actually, I think you were aware. Yes, I've always had a knack for it. However, as your therapist, I must refrain from such actions. We concluded our session, but I scheduled another appointment for 2 weeks later. I served Shelley with the divorce papers. She had her own lawyer, and the divorce process went smoothly since we didn't have any young children. It took around 8 months to finalize. Shelley was still living in Pittsburgh. Occasionally, we talked on the phone, and during one conversation, I mentioned Clara. Shelley seemed subdued when I brought her up. That girl always had her eye on you. I could see it. I feel like such a fool, she admitted, clearly upset. As for Clara, she moved in with me after I bought out Shelley's share of the house. Our sexual compatibility became consistent, and I expressed my love for her, emphasizing that I didn't desire marriage due to my past experience. Clara, who didn't have children but wanted at least one, and I discussed starting a family. She was 37, and I was uncertain about the idea. Eventually, Clara decided to stop taking birth control, despite my conflicted feelings. She persuaded me through our intimate moments, and I was overjoyed when she later informed me of her pregnancy. It was an unexpected turn of events that added excitement to our relationship, enhancing our sexual connection beyond what I thought possible. Our daughter Linda arrived just a few days after Clara and I got married in a judge's chambers. It was a small affair with only close family present: her parents, mine, and my kids from a previous marriage. Shelley remarried, surprisingly, to a pediatrician she met at a convention in Dallas. I hope she's happy, although I still hold some resentment toward her for her past actions. Despite that, everything turned out well for me, so holding on to a grudge seems unnecessary, though maybe just a bit. As for Connor, I didn't take any action against him. He brought his downfall upon himself. Last I heard, he went bankrupt, lost his medical license, and ended up working at a gas station in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Clara and I now have 2 children together, Linda and Stephen, named after her father, who's a wonderful person. Our compatibility remains strong, and I have faith it will continue that way indefinitely.